Welcome to the first official episode of the Around the A podcast, also known as the Around the ACL podcast. I am Blake Newsom, joined by my fellow co-hosts Mike and Neil. How you doing? Of course, we also got other guests that should be on the show at some point in the times by the names of Dylan Clearfield, Connor Quinn, to help us cover all the sports. Of course, Micah and I are big Hawks, Braves, Falcons. He's a bigger Georgia fan than I am. Dylan covers more of the UGA aspect, but our buddy Connor, he's got us locked down. If we ever need to talk some Atlanta United, some Georgia Tech athletics, Mike has got you covered with the Dream. I could dabble into the Gladiators, the Gwinnett Stripers, anything of that sort. We're here to talk anything and everything around the A. And yeah, man, we are just so excited to bring this podcast to you guys. It's probably been, over, 6 months in the making that Micah and I have just plotting and getting this thing out. And a special thank you to the Philly Sports Podcast, Rob and Tyler, for everything that you do, allowing us to use your StreamYard spaces to get all this content out. And yeah, man, Michael, hopefully this is the start of a long journey. But enough about me. How you doing this evening?
Doing great, man. Doing great.
I mean, yeah, we're coming to you guys on a late evening of July 12th, 2023. As you know, Michael, we couldn't really figure out the greatest time to start the podcast initially. We were trying to find a break in between, the Braves, the Hawks, the Falcons. I think we're in a great part of the cycle right now because this is the middle of the Braves All-Star break. There's no game. There's no series going on. The Hawks are only in summer league action. Falcons training camp is just about to start up. So I feel like we found a really good spot in the cycle to start this up, and I'm ready to go like Donkey Kong. Or tell me if you wanted to get into some headlines.
Man, whenever you're ready.
We're going to talk some Atlanta Braves here for a little bit, Micah. Of course, as I mentioned, this is the evening of July 12th. The All-Star game just wrapped up last night. The Braves sent a record high 8 All-Stars to Seattle, Washington for the game last night. The first time the National League won it since the year 2012. Ironically, the last year that Chipper Jones played and was in an All-Star game in his Hall of Fame career. I know you didn't get a chance to watch the full game, but based on the stuff you might have seen since then, what was your biggest takeaway of the game, and how proud are you of our guys?
I mean, anytime you can get that many players from one team, my team, it's a great feeling. I got a chance to see a couple of the highlights, seeing Sean Murphy and Arcia stopping the steal. Austin Riley getting out from his knees.
Yeah, the double off.
Up. Yeah, it was nice seeing the Braves show up.
Now, while they only did go 1 for 11 in the batter's box, I feel like there was a lot of things that went on elsewhere. As you said, Riley had a couple great plays at third, showing off right in front of Nolan Arenado, the Platinum Glover himself. Sean Murphy, of course, telling Randy Arozarena and the whole Tampa Bay organization to stop running on him. Y'all learned it the hard way just a couple of days ago. Stop running on him. They finally realized that. But speaking of, the Rays and well, I guess in this case, Adolis Garcia and the Rangers, he robbed Acuna and Murphy at potential doubles and triples off that right field wall. That might have been a couple hits to go our way. Olsen struck out on some nasty pitches from Yenny or Cano. But, it was a good game. It's one of the years where the pitchers won the All-Star game. There's years where it's like 9-8 and it goes 10 innings, and that's the year the hitters win and the pitchers can't seem to get it out. The last 2 years, it's been more of, the pitchers dominating the All-Star activities. And either way, it's been very exciting to see our boys in action. And our sights are set on the second half to try to do something, Micah, that the '90s Braves couldn't, and that's to win a second ring in a window. What are your thoughts going into it? Of course, we're going to talk about this upcoming homestand, what to expect, debriefing the first half. What's your biggest takeaway from the first half, hoping that they lead into the second half with?
I mean, just seeing how Acuna didn't want to do the home run derby, and then Strider and Elder didn't want to pitch. It just shows how much they want this second ring, because
their minds are set on other things.
Team, yeah. It's been a fun first half for Braves fans, and we're not even fully healthy with the pitching, and it's this team isn't at 100% yet, and that's a scary thing. we're at the top of the MLB right now
Yeah.
without our pitching ace.
And a 21 game winner from last year, along with a couple bullpen additions. You know they're going to add at the deadline too. I mean, this team is just on a roll, and it almost makes me wish that the playoffs were starting right now the way they're playing baseball. Because you don't know what they're going to look like in September compared to this, how the division's going to look. Because, you know, like some teams that are not in the race at this point will buy at the trade deadline, like the Dodgers, you know, like a team like the Phillies, and they might make a run out of money over the last couple months. Hopefully that's not the case. But, I mean, as we look at the second half, they start off with a 6-game homestand, of course, starting off Friday night, you know, less than 48 hours from now. The Chicago White Sox are in town. That's an interesting series for me because, Micah, the White Sox are one of those teams that are going to have a fire sale at the deadline. That's a team the Braves can easily poach. A team that it's rebuilt, let's just be completely honest. It failed. It fell on its face. They were supposed to be another team like the Braves that built a young core, added a couple veterans, and they were supposed to win divisions, go deep in the playoffs, win World Series championships. And it just hasn't come to about. They're on manager number 3, GM number 2. People have already quit. It just hasn't worked on the south side of Chicago. And I'm sure you don't know the roster, you know, the ins and outs, of course, as you're more of a basketball specialist. I'm more of a baseball specialist for those that are wondering. The White Sox have a lot of players the Braves can easily add at the trade deadline. Even some big ones that might include, you know, might have to include a Mike Soroka or a Vaughn Grissom in a trade package. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future episode. But I'll be very interesting to see how that series goes. They should definitely come out, probably at least take 2 or 3. I wouldn't be mad if they swept, but I could easily see them dropping 1 after having a week off. But the big test is after the off night Monday, they get the Arizona Diamondbacks again for Tuesday through Thursday, the 18th through the 20th. That's a team that really gave us some fits at the beginning of the month of June, coming off the Oakland Athletics series. We found a way to go in there, take 2 or 3. Eddie Rosario hitting that go-ahead grand slam with the Braves down to their last out, somehow finding a way to beat Zach Gallen on one of his not-so-best days. I'll be excited to see, you know, how that series goes. Do you think the Braves can – I mean, what are you expecting from this Braves club on this first homestand being the series I just gave you the information on?
I mean, I think the Braves, you know, I'm just thinking, you know, how the second half went last year, trying to not,
Catch
you
the
know,
Mets still, yeah.
hopefully, I don't want to say this gonna happen, then the other thing happened, but I'm just preface it by saying
No one shoots
hopefully,
100%. So
yeah, just hopefully they come out hot and you know keep it going and stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. Stay healthy because that's if we're not healthy, it's nothing this team is gonna be able to do because we have the players, we have the talent. It's all about health.
and you know that brings up a really good point. You talking about the health of the club. To speak on, as you mentioned a minute ago, they don't have Max Fried healthy yet. He made his first rehab start in AAA on Sunday afternoon. He'll probably make another one at some point this weekend for the Stripers. They're probably going to try to hope to get him a little over 5 innings of work in Gwinnett before they give him the call. Maybe his first start back will be on a little bit of a pitch limit. But he's pretty much been on track. That injury, when it first broke, looked like it could have been almost a Tommy John. Looked like he could be out the entire season, maybe some of next year. It turned out to be very clean. He handled things very well. And I'm so glad to hear that we're going to have him back because the Braves will not win a World Series without a healthy Max Fried. It's been amazing to see what they've done without him out. But, you know, Mike Soroka has still had 4 starts since the COVID season. Colby Allard has been bounced around from Atlanta and Texas for a reason. They've had 20-year-olds come up and make huge starts. You can't trust that when the lights get the brightest. I'm sure they'll probably add some sort of, you know, back-inning rental starter at the deadline, like a Jake Odorizzi type. Hopefully it doesn't go the same way he did for us when he got there, but they'll probably add some sort of contract year pitcher to eat some innings at the back end. Maybe somebody from the White Sox even. And the thing I'm not so sure about is Kyle Wright. You know, he is someone who came into the season getting shots in his elbow to make sure that everything was up there working properly. And it seemed like every start he had at the beginning of the season, He just wasn't stringing all of the things necessary together to be successful. He'd have one good start, he'd backpedal. He'd have 5 good innings of work in a start, and it'd blow up in his face. And he couldn't ever get on track. And it was that same series that Marcell Ozuna turned the season around, is when Kyle Wright came out with the elbow injury the second time, and they knew it was going to be serious, and they had to put him immediately on the 60-day injured list. And you haven't heard a lot of news from him. And to be quite sure with you, Micah, I'm not so sure we're going to get Kyle Wright back this year. If it is, it might be September. And who knows if there's even a spot in the rotation at that point. Max Fried could be cooking. Charlie Morton could be cooking. Bryce Elder and Mike Soroka, you hope that those guys stay up at this point in time. You still got the Jared Schusters and the AJ Smith-Shavers to call up if necessary. I think the Dylan Dodd train has kind of floated past this year. I don't think they're going to have to bring him back up another time. But who knows if there is even a spot if the rotation is working at its full capacity. So that'll be interesting to see. He might even be like a September call-up addition to this roster. I think another guy you didn't mention was, Dylan Lee and Jesse Chavez are supposed to be back within the next, week or two. How much help do you think they'll do for this bullpen, which on paper has been great, but for those of us that have watched the games, they've not been quite as advertised this year.
Yeah, I think getting them back would be huge because the bullpen currently constructed with them out, they've been given a whole bunch of scares.
Yeah. It's an Atlanta team, You're not going to get away anything with no scares.
Yeah. If we get those two back, though, I will feel way more comfortable than how I've felt lately, knowing we have those two available.
I think Dylan Lee's a big one because AJ Minter has not had an AJ Minter-like season. He's slowly getting his numbers back to where we want to be him. But that start, that April, was so putrid from him. He was pretty much a month behind the 8 ball. And so Dylan Lee had to pick up in his place. And I think he probably got a little bit of dead arm. That's why he got sent to the injured list for the length that it's been. And being that AJ Minter has been our only lefty in the bullpen, we need Dylan Lee back like ASAP. Jesse Chavez has had a great year. Ben Heller and those Michael Tonkin guys have been great for most of the season when they've been asked upon, but I think Jesse Chavez, that's his spot. That's where you need him to be. And so I think those are two big additions. It's almost like, I'll say the old adage that Chip Carey would say. It's like making a trade without actually making a trade. So to speak on the trade deadline one more time, we're kind of in agreement here that they might need, one more little rental inning-eating starter. They might add another bat somewhere if an injury comes up, like how Adam Duvall broke his wrist last year randomly towards the end of July. They ended up having to, go get Robbie Grossman from Detroit. There's, easily some tweakage that could happen with anybody where they'll have to go get one more bat at the deadline. So let's just assume that maybe they'll have to acquire one bat to replace an injury and add another piece to the bench for when they get back. What type of player, you don't have to say names if you don't know that well, would you want them to add at the deadline? Do you want another high strikeout setup guy? Do you want another lefty in the bullpen, which I think would be great? Do you want another ace type starter where you have to give up Soroka and Grissom to get a guy with a lot of years of control? What are you looking for at this deadline? What type of splash do you want to add?
I mean, at this point, I don't think an ace would be needed at this point, but it would be something very useful later if Free isn't, able to come back 100%, or if they don't feel he's 100% and comfortable enough to bring him back.
And he's a free agent after next year, and he hasn't been paid yet, so you got to wonder.
So that could be a route they go, but my preference would be getting somebody that can help in the bullpen.
Yeah, another setup guy, push everybody back. I wouldn't be surprised if they added 2 bullpen guys. As I said, they could add another high strikeout, low walk lefty, kind of like what they did with Iglesias last year, where they're going to slide everybody back in inning, slide Yates back, slide Jimenez back, slide Jesse to long relief probably, which maybe doesn't make where Michael Tonkin and Ben Heller, those guys will be needed as much down the stretch. Dylan Lee and AJ Minter will be your lefties. So if they were to add 2 bullpen pieces, I think that'd probably be the route they go. They might go get like another borderline high strikeout closer on a bad team to help Iglesias out. And I think that they could add a lefty, but if they add a lefty, I think it'll be somebody who's on a contract year because we got Tyler Matson coming back next year pretty much for free. He'll be ready to go when spring training starts. from his Tommy John surgery, which we wish the nutsack the greatest towards the end of his recovery. But yeah, to speak on the White Sox one more time, because as I mentioned, that's a team where we could poach. Like a name like Dylan Cease, I'm sure as a baseball fan, you've probably heard his name around the league the last couple of years. He's a guy that has like 3.5 years of control. A couple of years ago, this is a thought the Braves would never have. But being that we're finally in the win here moment, not just win now, win 3 years, like in 2019, 2021 even, we were good, but we weren't this ball club. They didn't have the additions to go get that final Death Star piece. If you added Dylan Cease, he would not only help you this year, he would help you for the next 3 years. And if you don't end up re-signing Max Fried after this 2024 season, you basically have another ace there in the waiting, right there, ready to go. With Strider, Charlie Morton's probably about to retire this season or the next, so that opens up another spot. But the only issue would be, Micah, it would probably have to include Vaughn Grissom, Mike Soroka, those type of candidates to get Dylan Cease and another piece from the White Sox. But you got to give to get, right? We'll talk about another trade package for another team here in a little bit. We're going to have a very similar conversation where I love to see that Mike Soroka is finally back. These next couple weeks are going to be a very big test before Max Fried gets back, if he's going to be able to continue to do it. And for Vaughn Grissom, they just don't have a spot for him right now. You know, Shoemake continues to get better at the AAA level. He does things a lot differently than Grissom has. I think the Braves would be more willing to keep Shoemake stashed in the minors for a couple years over Grissom. He's got great value right now. You could stash a guy like Soroka to the White Sox along with Grissom to the White Sox in a rebuilding organization, give them a chance to play every day, to earn their spot full-time once again. And in exchange, the Braves could probably take back one of the White Sox relievers, like a Michael Kopech, like a Liam Hendricks, like a Dylan. Excuse me, I'm sorry to have a mind blank here. Garrett Crochet, Joe Kelly. You know, it would take that type of package, and this is the type of thing I don't think the Braves would have ever done the last couple of years. But being that they finally are at this Death Star part of their run, I could easily see them doing it.
So my question to you would be,
sure.
of course you talk about Cease right now,
Yeah.
but other than him, is there any other player that you think that the Braves should, go after?
Well, I mean, there's a couple obvious answers, like some ones that are former Braves. Like I know the Red Sox have both Chris Martin and Kenley Jansen in their bullpen, and I wouldn't be mad at a Chris Martin reunion, put him back in the middle to set up relief of the bullpen. Kenley Jansen, not so much. I know he had that rocket hot start to the year, but, since May, he's been kind of the Kenley of last year where he's had like a 4-ish ERA. The velocity's been down, giving up homers with the cutter. So I'm not so willing to give him the nod maybe we would have thought, early in the year. But I'm not so sure they'll make a Death Star move like Dylan Cease, but I will hammer home is that they probably will add an inning-eating starter that's on a contract year in case Kyle Wright doesn't come back, in case Mike Soroka can't stay up, in case Max Fried has a setback. They'll probably add at least one starter of some sort that's on a contract year. They'll probably add a lefty reliever on a contract year because you don't know what you're going to get out of Dylan Lee and AJ Minter this year. You need at least one more lefty in the bullpen. And I think if I had to guess, their biggest addition would probably be another righty reliever. That's like a high strikeout, low walk guy that might take a little bit to get, but it might be worth it because you might be able to get a couple years of control on him. And if they were to get an offensive piece, it would probably be because of another like Adam Duvall broken wrist type injury right after the break, where all of a sudden there's a hole there, you get it, and then come September you have him on the bench along with Pilar and Travis, and all of a sudden you're another piece deeper. So this team is going to add. I just don't know exactly what it's going to be, but a couple teams I'm looking at that we probably could get pieces from are teams like the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago White Sox, interleague wise. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
But I think that's enough Braves talk for now. You ready to head to the hardwood and talk about your boys, the high flying Atlanta Hawks?
Let's go.
All right, I'll let you lead the way with this one. Of course, just recently last week, the biggest news was DeJounte Murray agreeing to an extension. Micah, you want to talk about the terms and your original thoughts on the extension itself? The floor is yours.
Yeah. So, of course, DeJounte Murray was coming up on a contract year next year, and Hawks go ahead and, extend him before hitting free agency. He would have been unrestricted free agent, meaning he would have been able to walk if he wanted to. But the Hawks went ahead and extended him, gave him the 4 year, 120 mil. That was a max they could sign him for this season. So I think it was a good deal for the Hawks and for DeJounte. It was a good deal for both sides, and it was a needed deal. Whether they want to keep him beyond this next season, it's a very tradable contract, and we're not overpaying him to where we can't try to get another player this season, next season. We have room to get somebody, especially with the Collins trade.
See,
So
the
what do you?
interesting point, the interesting point I take away from is it seems like we hear this term every time the Hawks sign someone to yet another extension. It's a very tradable contract, which means, hey, if it blows up in our faces, we have a way out of this. You heard it with John. You heard it with DeAndre. You heard it with Kevin. You heard it with Trey. Well, I guess maybe not so much with him. You heard it with Bogey just most recently. It's a term that I don't like hearing, but at least it's like it's there in the back of your head, like, oh, if this backfires, it's not fully, going to be contained in our facility. We might be able to send it somewhere else with an extinguisher. I liked it, as someone who bought a DeJounte Murray jersey last year. It was like one of the first jerseys I ever bought out of pocket. And NBA jerseys are really expensive, to be quite honest with you. I was like, there's no way we give him up after 1 year. And, the Hawks really couldn't afford it. Like, I guess there was always a world where even if we didn't want to re-sign him last year, we could always rely on a sign and trade and gotten something that way. You see that happen in the NBA more than any other sport, where free agents can technically still be signed and traded for where the other team, because it's I think the NBA GMs are more friendly with one another than most sports, where they at least want to get compensation for one another. It's like a bachelor's thing more than a scam.
But DeJounte, that wouldn't have been an option given that he was unrestricted. So they had to get the deal done just so he wouldn't walk for nothing after he gave up the three first round draft picks.
And Gallo, hope that knee's feeling better, buddy. It sucks that he wanted to suit up for the Boston Celtics and he didn't even get a chance to. He's on his third team since leaving Atlanta. That's a little rough. It's maybe the best because that would have been very awkward if he was hitting threes versus us in the playoffs last year. Wouldn't it have been? He'd been like, really?
That would have hurt it.
Him and Horford just high-fiving, clapping it up, being like, let's go. It would have been like, this is the most Hawks moment ever, dude.
And Muscala was already trying to kill us too.
Jeez. Yeah, you're right. But what I like about it, as you said, the Hawks got him this year he's taking a little under $15 million less yearly than he would have if he waited to the next year and signed the max with us, which, as you said, created enough money along with the John Collins trade, hopefully another move coming here soon, to open up money for a third player. I think what underlying thing is this assures Trae Young's happiness. Mm-hmm. The worst thing the Hawks can have is an unhappy Trae Young right now. Yeah. We are in a great spot to know that he is happy where he is. He's got his best friend also locked up. I know he did lose, John Collins, who he was very close with, and there might be a possible Capella or Bogey move here in the next couple months, which might end up being another one of his close friends gone. But at least, him and his co-star are both here for the long term. They're both loyal to one another. They're willing to work together. They think they finally have their coach to fix this mess. And that's an underlying thing that I feel like can fix any other underlying issue, from Nick Ressler down to the court. So I think with that, we'll transition to the topic that you wanted to bring up. A third star in name has been buzzing. It was on, it was off, and now I think it's back on for real regarding the Hawks adding a third potential big piece to the starting lineup, getting them from playing to contender levels in the East. That's Toronto's own Pascal Siakam. Mike, I'll give you the floor once again to let us know the info.
Originally, I was not on board with this at all. I didn't want this trade, didn't want any part of it, because Masai Ujiri, however you say his name, no NBA team likes trading with the Raptors because of him. He tries to raise the price of every player, and they're just a hard team to trade with. And originally they were wanting the young players. They wanted a vet, meaning would have been like a AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter type deal with draft picks, which is absolute no. We the Hawks are at a point where with how our money is gone to be soon. We need to keep the young players under contract. We need to
And
have
our
our guys.
owners already don't like to spend millions and millions. So that
Exactly.
that 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 meant another roadblock.
They claim they want a winning team, but want to stay under the luxury tax. But that's the conversation for another day. But yeah, um, now that they're saying the asking price is lowering, as in DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, in a multiple team deal. You know, I I would accept that type of trade where we won't have to give up any young assets or multiple picks.
And see, to speak on the trade rate, I think a lot of people don't understand the Raptors aren't the ones with leverage at this point. They waited so long. If they want Siakam gone and he wants to be out of there, the Hawks are the team with the leverage in this 3-team trade. You know,
Mhm.
I think you can bring up the third team is supposedly Dallas. If there is going to be a fourth team involved before the finalization, as you said, it's probably going to be the Pacers. The Pacers might want to sneak in there and get some additions to the trade. But as of right now, we know it is at least a 3-team trade, which includes our Hawks, of course, the Toronto Raptors, and our least favorite Dallas Mavericks. Trey Beta, by the way. But I guess to break down the original mocks that we saw on the internet a couple of days ago, and included us sending out Clint Capella to Dallas in exchange for JaVale McGee, who
Mhm.
is not a great player anymore, but is still not a bum. I wanted him on the Hawks like two
It's a
years.
serviceable big.
Yeah, I wanted him on the Hawks like 2 years ago. He's easily still a capable backup center for a playoff team. At worst, he's a reserve center if someone else like Mohamed Gay takes a step up throughout the year. And that was the Hawks Dallas part of the swap. And Dallas would be sending Josh Green, their young guard, along with Tim Hardaway Jr., a contract to dump to make the salaries match in exchange for to Toronto, where Toronto would be, of course, sending us Pascal Siakam. The Hawks' return would end up being DeAndre Hunter. So the only interesting thing about this trade it would be DeAndre Hunter and Clint Capella gone in the same deal. I thought that at least one of the three guys, including John Collins, would be on this team going into next year. But
Hmm.
if all three are gone, I'm not really complaining that much. We need change, as you and I have talked about numerous occasions, Micah, off camera, of course. So the Hawks, of course, would be sending DeAndre Hunter, whose contract is just kicking in. I think he fits what the Raptors they love these lengthy, tall, 3-and-D defenders. That's what DeAndre Hunter is at his best, along with Sadiq Bey, another expiring contract to match. Probably the Kings lottery protected pick we got in the Herter deal, and a lot of that is because we traded a couple of our own picks for DeJounte. So because of the Stephene rule, we can't trade until like 2029, and that doesn't have enough value. And if this was the package, I don't give a crap that Siakam's a rental, because at that point you're getting a second quality All Pro, a third quality star in his age 29 season for nothing. Like you're clearing salary for Capella, giving Onyeka
Hmm.
a chance to start in the process, getting a serviceable backup center who a lot of fans wanted on the team 2 years ago, keeping your young four, which includes, of course, the rookie Kobe, AJ, Jalen, and Onyeka. You keep all four of those guys. You shed salary, and you get Pascal. If he's a rental, who cares? You still have everybody. If he walks, it's like, oh no, well, just didn't work out. Let's go get money for somebody else. That's where the
Yeah,
Karl-Anthony Towns situation is so different, because Minnesota wants something completely different, and he's on this big, ginormous contract. Um, and go ahead, what
and
you were saying.
like it's interesting because even if even if like you were saying, even if he's a rental, we're clearing contracts.
So it's a
That that's
win-win.
that's opening yes, that's opening the team up to do something bigger next year, whether it's re-signing Pascal or going after another All Star.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's been rumblings of Giannis might want an extension that the Bucks don't want to give, and if the Hawks want to trade for him,
I don't know about that
could
one.
be an option. Zion could be an option. Brandon Ingram
Yeah.
could be an option.
Zion and
But we'll
BI are
see.
always in Hawks rumors. It seems like Atlanta and New Orleans that they always have. They're like the Pelicans are Hawks West. Honestly, they have such a talented team every year, but they never have a great coach. Their front office is blah, and they always find a way to end up in the play-in. Their stars are always under scrutiny. The Pelicans are Hawks West, legitimately and officially. I'm declaring it as that, so that makes sense why they're always in the rumors. But Micah, I think the biggest issue, because it's been a couple days, I think we knew when a lot of sources came out and said that the deal was pretty much done, but it might take about a week or two to be
Mhm.
officially announced because they're trying to see if there's a fourth team that's going to get involved because they're at a dead time in the NBA. As you mentioned, Masai, the Raptors GM, works very differently than most GMs. It's probably going to be about a week or two before this goes down. I think it's very clear I think it's probably at least a 75% chance that Pascal Siakam will be on the Hawks this season. It's just a matter of this last wrinkle that has been involved, which doesn't include the Pacers getting involved in the trade. But what I'll mention in a second is where I might be a little less willing to do the deal. And that's that the Raptors really want AJ Griffin. They have for a couple years. His dad was the assistant coach to Nick Nurse for a long time up in Canada. They loved his game. Heck, he hit a game winner on them at the very beginning during the Hawks' peak of their season last year. There's no reason for them not to want AJ Griffin. And, the dude's like 75 days older than me. He has the capability to shoot like 43% from the perimeter for the prime of his career. The reason, like,
Mhm.
as you said, the Hawks are trying to shed money. They're trying to create change, and that means you have to keep all these young assets and see what they develop into. And so it looks like with the wrinkle, the Hawks would be getting Josh Green, not JaVale McGee, and they'd be sending AJ Griffin along with Bay and no second round pick to the Raptors. And I'm 100% on the first deal. This one I'm
Yeah.
about 70% because I do know you have to give to get. I understand
Mhm.
that. But AJ Griffin is still only 20 years old. We haven't even seen him in the Snyder system. He barely got playing time after, Snyder took over last year.
I mean, the thing with that though is he barely got playing time, but at the same time, you got to think about it with us sending out DeAndre Hunter and possibly Sadiq Bey,
And
AJ
AJ,
Griffin.
we don't have a three.
Yeah. So what the if the Hawks want to move on from DeAndre Hunter, do they see AJ Griffin as his replacement? Because if that's their mindset, we can't we
Probably
can't
not yet.
we
Probably not
can't
yet, but maybe.
yeah, we
So, like,
absolutely can't move on from him because at that point we have to go out and look for another three. But at the same time, we got John
money.
Collins traded player exception, so we could
Yes,
probably get a mid type player from
we'll get
that.
into that in just a second because I
And
did have the same idea the other day.
and for free agency, we got you know I know Kelly Oubre, he isn't that type of player, but he can play defense and he can
Which we
shoot.
need. We need some defense on the bench. So,
So
a better all our 3-and-D players have been disappointing since Tony Snell, pretty much. But you know, to give up AJ Griffin basically means you have to extend Siakam right then and there. Like, I am so willing to find a way around this thing. I'm willing
mhm.
to give an extra second. I'm willing to say, all right, you want Dre, Bay, Kings first? We'll give you a second, maybe even 2 of our seconds. You guys can have Josh Green. We'll take JaVale McGee instead. We're going to find a way. We'll get Indiana involved. We're going to find a way to keep AJ Griffin on this team. Hey, his dad's not part of your coaching staff anymore. I don't understand the love for him that you guys might have had, 6 months ago. Because, of course, he did take the job with Giannis, Middleton, and company. So I'll be very interested to see. Again, I am 100% on board if this doesn't include AJ Griffin. If it does, I'm like 70%. But I think we can pretty much count within the next week or two. This trade is going to happen. It's just a matter on if the masses and the pieces in the trade will be moved around.
And I think really at this point is like many people have said, the Raptors are trying to gauge other people's interests to make the Hawks give a better offer. Which at this point, I don't think the Hawks are falling for it because it's really bait at this point. because it's
I'm
really
not,
no team that has anything better to give than what the Hawks are giving, and the Hawks have the best team set for a Pascal to come in.
yes. And that includes not giving away your young talent. And I will say this about Landry, being that him and Kyle, our first time in office, were like, oh Lord, Travis did a lot of great things for us. I know he messed up a little bit down the stretch, but to push him out was very Nick Wrestler, Tony Wrestler. Like, he goes to Washington, he's already kind of doing his thing, getting pull from his old Golden State Warriors over there, extending Kuzma. Looks like they're doing enough to stay afloat for now without Bradley Beal. And I wish him the well. I wish him the best up in the nation's capital. But we were a little nervous. I know you and I were like, I want to trust Landry. I want to trust Kyle Korver, but they haven't had experience in that position. We have a feeling that Nick Wrestler is going to have a little too much power over them. For those of you that don't know who we're talking about, we're of course talking about the owner's 28-year-old son, who has just as much basketball experience as you and I and all the viewers on NBA 2K franchise. He doesn't really know what he's doing, at least from the sounds of the rumors, which are always abundant in the Hawks franchise.
Sounds like he's just trying to please Trey, who they've shown an open friendship, going to his wedding. And has so many opinions about him, but that's for another time.
We'll get to that. We got some months before the Hawks off season ends, so we'll definitely get to that. This will probably be a weekly or bi-weekly show, you'd have to think. But to speak on Landry, his first couple of deals have all been incredible. To seeing the stuff that he's doing, how he's like, I was up 2 weeks ago. I'm like, I'm not getting my hopes up at all for the Hawks this year. I did it the last 2 years. They have been the worst regular season watch in such a long time for the talent they've had. I don't want to get into it. I don't like, of course I'm going to watch as a fan, but I'm not ready to put my heart and soul into them over 82 games like I have if they're not committed. But Landry, it seems like he's doing his best to move the chips as quick as possible and get this team back out of the rut where they seemed to peak early during the COVID year, or the year after the bubble when we made our run. So to finalize one final point on Siakam, you noticed, or you made a point that his best fit is in Atlanta. If he wanted, because a lot of Raptors fans have said that a lot of his wording, and he doesn't want to sign an extension, he doesn't want to get traded here and there, it's because him and Masai's bridge has been burned. He's letting it be known that he wants out of there. He's done with it. Their window's closed. Relationship over. He'll sit out if necessary. And if he comes to Atlanta, in a winning environment with Trey, with DeJounte, with Coach Schneider, we hope all these things come to plan. Some of the guys take the next step. The changes work. They're a good regular season basketball team. A higher chance you get him to extend. And you want to know another wrinkle into that, which would make it even easier for him to extend, is by keeping all the young guys. You keep all the young guys, of course, once again, as Kobe, AJ, Jalen, and Yeka. Your team is better with all four of those in the now and in 3 years. And you're more willing to keep him when your team is at its best.
Yep.
And I think the Raptors GM and also their fans have to realize they're not trying to win now. They're going Scotty, they're going OG, and they're willing to play the play-in. They're willing to tango with it, but their window is over for now.
Exactly.
And the Hawks have the leverage, and I will be very surprised if AJ does get shipped in this. If it does, that means that Masai ended up pulling, Landry and Nick Wrestler by the neck and was like, you know what, this is it, or it's not happening. Because this move really does have to be done. Because as of right now, the Hawks are still the same team, minus John Collins, who, for what it was worth, his peak has passed him in a Hawks uniform, but he still averaged 16 for you last year.
Yep.
This team is not better as of right now than it was last year. So I hope this move gets done. I hope it's done without all the four young guys that we've spoke about, because I think if it does happen, all these things we've just talked about in the last 15 minutes will probably end up coming true. Because, Micah, you and I have been watching the Hawks for a long time. I know we're only 19 and 18 respectively, but we kind of know what we're talking about when we know how this franchise works in the regular season. And we're hoping that if the things we're saying come to light and come true, we should be finally set up for a good regular season. It has been terrible watching this team throughout the winter the last couple of years. So one more point about the Hawks before we get into the Summer League, which I didn't get a chance to watch quite as much. I've kind of heard the headlines. I've seen the highlights. I meant to watch at least one of the games live, but I got caught up watching MLB beginning. That's just like NFL Red Zone for MLB. That's my bad. That's the baseball fan of me getting caught up. I'll let you Get to that in a minute. But you notice how the Hawks have the trade exception for John Collins. Let's say the Pascal deal goes through, everything we just spoke about, AJ Griffin's still on the team, etc. They're probably still down to 3, right? Because you traded Bay, you traded Dre. You're not sure if AJ or Jalen or Bogey is able to be the starting 3. The Hawks will have $14 million or so to go get one more forward. So do you think they probably spend that money on the last piece of the team, like on a forward, on like a 2-year deal? Someone like Kelly Oubre, maybe not him specifically, but go get somebody for like 2 years out of free agency to play that 3 position while Jalen develops and proves he can play it, while Bogey proves he's healthy and can play it occasionally, and while AJ can prove that he's a better defender and can take over a starting lineup spot. Would you think that's what the Hawks would use their last free agency money on, is a 3?
Absolutely, especially if we make that trade. And the interesting thing about John's traded player exception is they could either use it in a trade, which wouldn't work in a Pascal trade, by the way, because the money wouldn't match up. Yeah. But they could either use it in a trade or they could do nothing with it, and they could just use that money to extend Onyeka next year,
which could also be great.
And then, like you mentioned, Kelly Oubre, he's good. We could give him 1+1 with a player option, team option.
Yeah,
he's a serviceable 3. He's a great defender, and in the past he's been a great defender when healthy.
He's still probably better than what we've had on the team the last couple of years. So.
Absolutely, and he's proven he can shoot the ball, and if he gets hot, he's one of those players that's killed the Hawks a bunch of times, especially.
Him and Terry Rozier, man.
Hated those Hornets games, but he
would kill the Hawks. Yikes, man.
He was either hot or very cold. There was no in between.
But the games he was very cold, he was still injuring our guys. So, that I made a bad joke. After the Hawks lost their 3rd game of the season to the Hornets, I said, you know what? I hope our next coach takes the Charlotte Hornets seriously, kind of as a direct jab to Nate McMillan and how terrible the Hornets have been the last couple of years. To see how close the Hawks have played in so many games where LaMelo hasn't even faced us. It's been an absolute joke, and that's been the exact reason the Hawks have been in the play-in and not a 4, 5, 6 seed, is because they cannot take care of the cupcake games against the Texas teams not named Dallas, against Charlotte, against Detroit. They finally did this year, but they then lost games to Orlando. And we'll definitely have another offseason discussion about what the Hawks have to do to figure out how to be a successful 82-game team and not a 16-game team. And that includes, winning these cupcake matchups. But let's go down the Kelly Oubre route or someone of that sort. Let's just say they get a free agency forward on a 1-1. Let's look at the roster, right? You got Trae Young, DeJounte Murray. Let's say they're starting, at least the beginning of the year, before Bogey, Jalen, AJ takes it over. Let's say that Kelly Oubre is starting, that player that they add. You got Sadiq at the 4, and Onyeka at the center. Off the bench, of course, I think we can agree that Patty Mills has a higher chance of staying on the roster than Rudy Gay did. He's still a solid, he can play that Aaron Holiday role while also being a veteran, being that we lost some leadership the last summer.
That's a great thing I've been looking for. Ever since we lost Vince Carter and Solomon Hill, we haven't had that type of vet to, keep the locker room together. And then now that it's a point guard, he's been around DeJounte, and he could be around Trae now. And Patty, he has, he's won championships, so
yeah, a couple.
So he can. And then Snyder was under Pop's tree, so he was with Bud. So I think he was a great addition for a bit.
And I hope he does find a way to at least be on the team for the first majority of the year. I know Justin Holiday was kind of we didn't know if he'd be here the entire time. His game had to prove it, and it didn't last year. I hope it's a different case for Rudy Gay, but I think we can agree that Patty Mills is a better player as of July 2023 than Rudy Gay is. They're definitely past their primes, but I think Rudy Gay is not as much of a fit and is not a good of a player for the Hawks as Patty Mills is right now. I think Patty Mills can play that Aaron Holiday role where, as the Hawks play that stagger a lot. Where Trae and DeJounte are probably going to be on the court for almost 40 minutes, but that last 10 minutes of play where they're neither of them on the court, Patty Mills might be able to hold it down for you. Score 5-6 points, get a couple assists, not turn the ball over, be in the huddles. So let's put him on the bench, right? You got Patty Mills, you got
Mhm.
Bogey, you got AJ, you got Jalen, you got JaVale McGee, right? Um, then of course you have like the Muhammad Gays, the Kobe Buffkins, whatever reserve they decide to keep, whether it's Bruno, whether it's Krejcik,
Well,
whatever it is.
they did guarantee Bruno's contract, but me personally, I I can't see him being on the roster. I could see him being moved
Maybe in the last
in one of
trade.
these
Yeah,
trades. Yeah,
one of the last ones, especially if Indiana gets in the Siakam deal. But if you look at that like 13-man roster, does that I know, on paper the Hawks always look good. Does
yeah,
that like 13 those 13 men I named right there? Of course, a huge part is Quinn Snyder's the head coach, not Lloyd Pierce, not Nate McMillan. Does that sound like the best Hawks team we've had since the year before we acquired Dwight Howard? Does that sound like the
definitely,
best roster?
definitely. Anytime you have I'm gonna say big three because it takes time for players to build a chemistry. But anytime you have
Yeah.
a big three with three all stars, that's a good team to build around. And it's not much that you need to add when you have three 20 plus points per game scorers on the roster.
So once again, quickly that's it's Trae Young, DeJounte Murray. We're gonna say that uh John Collins trade exception will probably be the starting three for at least the beginning of the year. We'll just throw a name out there, say it's Kelly Oubre. It might not be him. He's probably going to be the starting three opening night for a little bit. Pascal Siakam at the 4 and Yek at the 5, which I love. He's finally getting the opportunity. The bench would include Patty Mills. Bogey is like your 6-man candidate. Of course, you got the Young Bucks, Jalen and AJ. JaVale McGee is another veteran. You hope that eventually the Muhammad Gays, the Kobe Buffkins crack the rotation by the second half. And then you got like the Bruno Fernandos and what other reserves they decide to keep, whether that's a Garrison Matthews, etc., to round out 14, because they'll leave that 15 spot open for wrestlers' pocketbook. But that's one of the best rosters we've had probably since the year before we got rid of Al Horford and Jeff Teague for Dennis Schroeder officially and Dwight Howard.
And the thing
Which
about the East is, you see how the Heat, they went from the eighth seed losing their first playing game to going to the finals.
it's
The
almost like they
East,
let them beat us, bro. They almost let us win.
that's what it felt like. But yeah, the East is like whoever gets hot is going to be, the team to make it because the past couple of years we've seen it. The Celtics stayed hot, the Bucks stayed hot, the Heat got hot, and I see the East being open because Celtics have their problems with Jaylen Brown. Is he gonna stay there? Is he happy? Are they gonna resign him? And then the Bucks got Chris Middleton. He's had injury problems, and then Giannis had an injury problem in the playoffs this year. And it's like the East is open if the Hawks can get that third star. I think we have a chance to be up there. And I do not believe in the Cavs or the Knicks, but that's also another conversation.
And ironically, one of the only teams the Hawks play really consistent good games against head to head is the Cavs. They seem to have their number
Mhm.
for whatever reason. So if you look at on paper, like of course on paper the games aren't played that way, but it's all we can go off here in the month of July. If this Hawks roster does end up being the way that we think it is, let's just look at some teams around the East that we know that are better than us to see at least where the floor should be. And we're going to assume that Dame does end up getting moved to Miami here because I think you and I can agree, Mike, that's going to happen before the season starts. He's going to be in Philly or Miami, more than likely Miami. We'll say he's put there, and James Harden's in Philadelphia, right? We can agree the Heat will probably be better than us with Jimmy Butler, with Dame, with Adebayo. That team has our number. I know we beat them in the play-in last year, as we just admitted. It seems like they let us win. They're going to be better. Boston, they've done a good job retooling so far. I feel like Marcus Smart found a great home in Memphis. He's going to be that Dylan Brooks guy who's even better. John Morant suspended. He's going to come in. They're going to quickly love Marcus Smart in Memphis, and they did that.
Absolutely.
They did that to shed salary for Jalen and for Jason. And, Kristaps is a great spot for that. They found a way to keep Malcolm Brogdon. They did end up losing Grant Williams and the entirety of that draft class, but I think we can agree the Celtics and the Sixers will be above us, the Bucks as well. the Heat. So then we're still in that tier where it's like, are we better than Cleveland? Are we better than Brooklyn? Brooklyn, I tell you, Micah, that is a team I will be very upset about if they are better than us again this year. There is no excuse that a team led by Cam Johnson and Bridges
Bridges.
and Claxton should be better than Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, Pascal Siakam. What's the point at that? When you get to that, like I know they had Kyrie and KD for parts of last year. The Hawks should have caught those dudes. They really should have. So that if you're still on that level where you can't beat Brooklyn and Cleveland, that's where you get stuck in the play-in again. You're going to be down there with New York. You're going to be down there with teams like Orlando who are taking the next step. The teams like Chicago are always going to be in that top 10 mix, and you're right back in that juggle land. So they have to find a way to take every game seriously this year, and find a way where at least you're the 5th or 6th seed. I will find it a success if they find a way out of the play-in this year, even with Pascal Siakam and all the young guys on the roster. What about you?
Absolutely. And my thing with Miami, if they do trade for Dame, I honestly don't see them being the team everybody's expecting them to be because
they're a 16-game team. They're not an 82-game team.
Hero. They have to lose Duncan Robinson. They have to lose Jovic. They have to lose a good bit of their team after they already lost Strus and Vincent, who was big parts of their team the past couple of years. And then you lose defense with losing Strus and Vincent and adding Dame. You're adding offense, but at the same time you're losing defense, and that's what Miami's been built on.
Haslam's finally retiring.
Yeah, and it's like you got a nice big three with Dame, Jimmy, and Bam. But after that, you got a whole bunch of undrafted players, and I know they don't like to be called that, but
yeah,
that's what it is.
Ultimately, though, I'm still going to trust Pat Riley. I'm still going to trust Eric Spoelstra, and I know that no matter what seed they end up in, they're a 16-game team with Dame, with Jimmy, with Bam. Those guys get better as the season goes. Bam is usually the guy who, when the regular season is going tough, he's kicking butt throughout the regular season, and then it seems he loses gear. Yeah, loses gear in the playoffs. Well, Jimmy's the other direction. But that's a team I don't think no matter where they end up in, I trust them when the lights get the brightest, that organization. It's very funny how the Braves dominate the Marlins, and they're like son, father, and is the exact opposite with the Heat and the Hawks. How things go, but we're nearing the hour mark. We still got some Falcons and some other sports to talk about, but I'll give you the floor here for a couple of minutes before we transition into some Falcons talk as we near the hour mark of this podcast. Hope you guys are enjoying so far. If you are, make sure you guys give us a like and comment, subscribe down below to the Around the A podcast, whatever YouTube channel you end up watching it on, whether it's mine, whether it's Micah's, whether it's the channels itself, a replay on Twitter, a clip out on any social platform. We really appreciate you guys, and we hope that you enjoy and watch this podcast grow. That we hope it has. So, of course, we got one more little Hawks segment tonight before we get into the Dirty Birds over in Flowery Branch. Again, I haven't had a chance to watch these games as much as I would have liked to. You give us, everybody, an update on the Summer League, the first couple of games, what to expect in Game 4, and, everything you've seen. Floor is yours.
I'm going to keep it short since we're, like you said, nearing the hour mark, The Summer League, a lot of people like to overreact or this player is really good. This player is bad. He's a bust. All that. And really, like, I hate, when people, try to judge a player from the Summer League because you have so many other things. Because you have other players that's hungry to make the roster. You got players that know they're on the roster and, backing off for the other players. And, so me personally, we got Muhammad Gay, who's all the Hawks fans been loving. He's from the defense to the offense, the almost dunks and all that. And, and then, you got to have somebody the team doesn't like or the fans don't like, and that's Kobe Buffkin. But I've been on his, bandwagon from the beginning because you see the potential. He has defense. He's a bigger guard. He can score, and like Trae Young, he started off slow. He started off bad in the Summer League. And you see the player he is now. I'm not going to say Kobe's going to turn into that type of player, but you just can't judge a player from having a bad summer league. You have to give a player time to develop because he's going to be behind Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, and that's two All-Star guards right there. And then you got Patty Mills if he stays on the team, who's going to be able to mentor him. And it's so much to go into it, and you just can't count a player out or say they're going to be this type of player or that type of player before you get to the actual season.
Yeah, and I think you pull up a great point that there's been many players that struggled in the summer league, like really atrocious. They don't even look like basketball players. They turn out just fine, whether they're rookies who become superstars or rookies who just become average NBA players. There's been so many people that have had atrocious first summer league games. There have been players that have had 45-point summer league games. It doesn't really matter what you do out there. It's really just showcasing that you're there. For the rookies, I think it's more for the repetition for those guys. But I think that's what you said. The summer league is most for the G Leaguers that are trying to take the next step, the guys that are trying to make a roster, the second rounders, etc., like the Vita Krejcis, like the Brady Manics, like the second rounders like Muhammad Gaze. It's funny because everybody was calling him Muhammad Antetokounmpo after the first three quarters out in Las Vegas. But So give us an update on what you saw from Brady Manick, what you think the Hawks will do with him. You think he goes to College Park and is part of that roster this year, and also how AJ looked in his couple games.
Well, starting with Brady, outside of the first game, haven't seen much of him, because they started playing the guy we already signed on a two-way contract in Miles Norris, so they've cut Brady's minutes for him, which I don't really agree with because you already got a player signed. So give the player that isn't on the contract a shot at making a contract or at least a G League team. And I say Brady Manick should, the Hawks, the Skyhawks should at least, bring Brady Manick on because like Quinn Snyder would love to have a shooting big like Brady, so I think that'd be a good option for them to add. And with AJ Griffin, like I said, it's players that back off for the players that actually trying to make the roster. I didn't see AJ trying too hard. He just he just played basketball. He wasn't trying to force anything. He wasn't trying to be a different player than what he is. He shot, and we've seen an improvement with his ball handling, and I think AJ is gonna take another step, if he's given the time to make mistakes or improve. If he gets playing time, I think he'd be able to make the next step this season.
I couldn't agree more. All right, we'll move over to Flowery Branch. We got one more segment for you guys tonight, and we'll touch on at the end our Around the World segment, which will probably be any other non-Atlanta sports topic that Micah and I, Dylan and I, Connor and Dylan, Connor and Micah, whatever the crew will be that day, we'll get into. That's what the Around the World segment is. But first, we got to talk some Falcons. And Micah, you and I have discussed this many times over text, over call, etc. How excited we finally are for a Falcons team this year. And I want everybody to know that too from the jump on this first podcast. We are two of the most realistic Falcons fans you can meet. Micah and I are two people that are teenagers that have found a way to stick through the heartache they've given us as children through our preteen years to our early adult years, and we're still with them like a lot of people haven't been. And we are finally truly excited to see what the future holds for this franchise, which says a lot because I am not used to saying those words. And I can't wait for them to kick off camp here in a couple weeks to get down to the Bends in August before they kick it off right after Labor Day against Bryce Young or Andy Dalton and the Carolina Panthers. Let's just catch the viewers up on, where our thoughts stand going into training camp on the team and everything we're happy that they've done so far throughout the offseason. And just where's your mindset at compared to where it's been the last 6 years?
I mean, at this point, the past couple of seasons, I wouldn't even be thinking about the Falcons.
Just like 6 wins, 5 wins.
Yeah. But like this year, actual real expectations that the Falcons can and will. I'm gonna say will be a playoff team this year, and
Oh, talk your talk.
we've added a whole bunch of talent on this roster from the defense to the offense, and it's it's gonna take a lot to go wrong for this team not to be what I expect them to be this year.
What was some of your favorite additions? What I will say is I'm so glad the route that Terry and Arthur have gone. They have gone the other way in every possibility that Thomas and Dan or even Mike Smith would have gone. They have gone the opposite direction, setting this team up for the best success possible. And I love that they want the quantity over quality route and for agency. Got a couple trades, kept some of the resources. I love the way they drafted. I know a lot of people hated the Bijan pick. They hated the Zach Harrison pick. They hated they trade away a comp pick that maybe could have gotten Tyler Scott in the 5th round, Desmond's number 1 target from college. I'm just happy to see where the Falcons finally are. So, like, Michael, what were some of the top moves that you absolutely loved that they made this offseason?
I'm gonna say my favorite and very underrated that many people aren't talking about is Jeff Okudah.
Yeah.
For many reasons, like Jeff Okudah, he's been injured with the Lions, but last year with the games he's played, he's shown he can be that. What was he, number 2 pick type? He was the top. I'm gonna just say I don't know what pick it was for sure, but he was the first quarterback taken.
Burrow, Chase Young, Okudah,
number 3 pick. Yeah, and he's been showing he could be that type of pick. And now that he's with the Falcons and another young corner in AJ Griffin, where he won't have to guard the best player. I'm
yeah, it's near midnight, folks. It's near midnight. We're sorry.
Yeah, AJ Terrell.
You're
yeah,
good.
where he won't have to guard the best player, the best receiver, every game. That helps him out, and he has more help. And another player with Jesse Bates, he have him back there. Really, I love all the defensive additions, and Calais Campbell, David Onyemata, Caden Ellis. I just love it all. And then when we could go out and trade for Jonnu Smith, I've just loved every move that Terry
Mike
and
Hughes
Arthur
even
have made.
bringing him in with Jeff. I also love the little things as well, like even the Trey Flowers type pickup. He's a guy that locks down tight ends. He's going to give Kyle and Jonnu enough work in practice to probably make the roster. I even love that I feel like even their own retainable players were the right signings, like Lorenzo Carter, like Bradley Pinion, like first Jermaine Ifedi. I think something might have happened within the locker room, but I liked the original re-signing at the time. Liam McCullough, the long snapper. One we'll talk about here in a minute who is still out there, guys like Rashawn Evans and McCole Pruitt. If they did bring them back before camp, I would be overly excited as well to see them maybe complete out the roster. But, I don't think this is some of the pessimistic Falcons fans, which, people that don't watch the Falcons and haven't followed them the last couple of years, I do understand their reasons, because there are some idiotic Falcons fans out there, I will admit, that have probably preached these things the last couple of years saying, we're going to be good, we're going to win 10, 11 games. I think Mike and I are being truthful here and saying that, we expected them to win 5-6 games last year. They overshot us a little bit. We kind of know what we were speaking about. And this is, I think, the best Falcons team we've had in 6 years, which says a lot. It really does. I know Calais Campbell is not the guy he was, but just to be able to get him, just to be able to recruit him, to poach the Saints, to get some, to trade for guys like Jonnu and Jeff Okudah, Bud Dupree, this team is set, man. And I even they took care of their own that they needed to. And if Ritter's not the guy, I feel like Heineke is good enough to get us through a season. They have money, they have draft capital to go get a guy a year after. I feel like a lot of the media and a lot of the common knowledge fans don't acknowledge that. If Ritter is this terrible, atrocious quarterback, we won 7 games with Mariota last year with 1/3 of the roster. Heineke can get the job done for half a season. We'll go spend that $100 million or more draft capital to go get that guy.
The thing they refuse to acknowledge is that we have Arthur Smith, the running genius, where Desmond
We
Ritter
didn't even mention Kyle Pitts and Drake London.
Desmond Ritter won't have to be 200, 300 yard per game passer.
Hut and the
He
ball
has
off.
Bijan in the backfield. He has Cordell Patterson in the backfield. He has Algier in the backfield.
Hopefully,
He
at some
has
point, Huntley.
yes Huntley in the backfield. And then we got
Keith
what's the guy
Smith
name
blocking for
from
him.
what's the guy
Parker
name
Hesse
from the
blocking for him.
Bucks? Um,
Scotty Miller.
Scotty Miller.
Matt
He can
Collins,
even
of course, as well. Las
take
Vegas.
some jet sweeps. Like we have multiple options. And Desmond
Johnny as
Ritter is
well.
not a bad passer. He's a very efficient passer. He does not turn the ball over. So
He
once
did
the
not
running
throw an
game
interception his entire rookie season.
exactly, once the running game gets going, the passing game is going to open up for him. So I don't understand what people's doubts are about.
So, we want that whole time without really even mentioning Drake London and Kyle Pitts. They're definitely an elephant in the room conversation that we'll have at a later, maybe preseason episode based on the production we're seeing, some stuff we want to see from them. So we'll hit this topic real quick. We want to talk about any other free agency additions. I feel like we kind of hinted on it a couple minutes ago. Like I feel like we can agree to this. The three biggest needs the Falcons probably still have going into camp, which they can still find going into the regular season. They might be okay to go into this season specifically without addressing all of them, being that this isn't like a Super Bowl or bust year by any means. I think we can agree they probably need one more linebacker of some sort. They probably need one more wide receiver of some sort. And they probably need another depth tackle, another swing tackle, in case of Caleb McGarry aggression, in case of Jake Matthews finally getting hurt because of the cut of Jermaine Ifedi, etc. I feel like those are the three needs that probably are still most necessary to add. So who are some guys you would like the Falcons to, still out there that are even based on guys we just mentioned, or even just some of the free agents that are still listed?
I mean, not even going beyond who you already said, and Rashawn Evans, and like you mentioned, Michael Pruitt, and another name
Corey
we
Davis.
yeah go for him in a trade, or we go or Jarvis Landry. That'd be he could still play, and he'd be a good
Yeah.
mentor for a player like Drake.
It
Player
seems like
even
those talks have gone cold, though, haven't they? I haven't really heard much from that camp recently, the Jarvis Landry talks. So we'll see.
even if we go after a player like Corey Davis, he's already familiar with Arthur Smith's system, with him being with them being together in Tennessee, and you see how we got Jonnu Smith, who was another player who was familiar with Arthur Smith in Tennessee, and Michael Pruitt was also a player that was in Tennessee with Arthur Smith. So, you know,
Tight ends galore, baby.
yeah, we got multiple options, and the crazy
No
thing is
Parker Hesse disrespect.
we got the money to sign them for one, and for two, the offense is already looking good. Just adding players like that makes this offense even better.
Like, I'm sitting here looking at the NFL app, and I'm just looking at our roster, and it's the best it's been in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
They just did so. I mean, they even brought back like the Cardero Hodges of the world. They kept Frank Darby and Jared Bernhardt for one more, preseason to see what they're worth. We still got Parker Hesse. They're willing to add as many guys as possible, but keep all the guys from last year to earn their job to create extra depth for this team. So we'll jump into our award predictions, and we'll leave regular season talks for a later episode because I know we definitely want to get into that Panthers game and preseason talk after spring training training camp starts. But we'll start with our Falcons roster award predictions, of course, talking just for this year. Micah's idea. We wanted to start off with offensive player of the year, and since it was your segment, Micah, I'm going to have you go first for all these. Who do you have being the 2023 Falcons offensive player of the year?
I'm going to go with the rookie, Bijan Robinson. We have, with the Falcons not having to be passing offense, you have many opportunities for Bijan Robinson to, get the ball. And with Arthur Smith being the running genius he is, and, having the threats like Drake London and Kyle Pitts on the outside, and Jonnu Smith, is just going to open up with the play actions. With the passing game, but the play action is gonna, open up the run game for Bijan. So that's gonna be my pick.
Interestingly enough, I see my camera is like 30 seconds to a minute behind my movement. So sorry if I look just dead in the face to you guys. I promise I'm here and live and active. It's just I don't know what's going on. My internet has not been the greatest tonight. It's definitely a first podcast episode if you couldn't tell once already. My offensive player of the year, you kind of stole my thunder there a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to you. So I guess I'll play the devil's advocate here, and I'm gonna go Kyle Pitts. I think this is a year where you got to see it. I think this is a year where you can see it. He's going to take more wide receiver snaps this year with the addition of Johnny Smith. I mean, people forget he had 1.1 thousand yards in a rookie year with a ghost of Matt Ryan.
Mhm.
You know, he had like 3 touchdowns last year and just over half a season with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. He had I think the most missed targets out of any, starting caliber weapon in the league last year. Like, people know, like I've formerly called myself as a Gator fan at heart. I'm never gonna like trash Kyle Pitts for what it's worth, but I will defend him where it's necessary. And I know that he is not a bust. People will love to play the card of, oh, they should have taken Jalen Waddle. They love to play Monday morning quarterback. They should have taken Jamar Chase. They should have taken Devontae Smith. Who says those guys wouldn't have had the same issues here as Kyle was? Who says that Jamar Chase would have only had 1 touchdown his rookie year? Like, you got to play the cards in the same situation. Kyle Pitts would have balled with the Bengals. Devontae Smith would have balled with the Bengals. You don't know how that works out here. If Kyle Pitts goes to the Dolphins, does he have trouble as well playing with, Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater? Probably a little bit, right? I would have to think. So, I don't understand the casuals, especially Saints fans. Saints fans love to label Kyle Pitts as a bust, but I think this is the year where you see it. I don't know if the touchdowns are there, but I do know the yardage is there. I know the targets are there. I know he's finally a threat. I feel like he's finally going to be recognized this year. Fantasy owners will at least be happy with his results, and I'm going with him for my offensive player of the year. All right, Micah, to the defensive side of the trenches. You're back up.
All right. My defensive player of the year. I'm kind of torn between 2 players.
Okay, I'll probably pick the other.
I'm gonna just go with Jesse Bates.
Okay. Make his addition felt.
Yeah. He has multiple things he can bring to this team with veteran leadership. You got Richie Grant under him to teach him a lot. We know he's arguably a top 5 safety in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And the Falcons have been missing a safety like him for a while because seen many games where the Falcons would get bombed on, and I'm just glad we got Jesse, and I'm hoping he fixes the problem we've been having.
Yeah, it would be great to have his addition felt nearly. For those of you that follow me on Twitter, of course, we'll give ourselves shout outs at the end of the episode once again. People saw my live reaction about, 20, 30 seconds after the Jesse Bates signing broke. Micah, you know exactly what video I'm talking about.
What the fuck? What the what? Wow!
How excited I was, and a lot of people were in the comments saying, "Oh, he's a mid-safety, Falcons." Like, people don't understand, man. Like, we hadn't had money in 6 years. That meant a lot to us. We're not the Steelers. We're not the Packers, where that's just another year, another player. Like, we hadn't got a star safety in free agency in a long time. All the defensive players that were supposed to be game changers in the Dan Quinn era were buffoons. They all turned into Dante Fowler. Nothing was excitable. And we knew that. Holy crap, this is one of the best guys in the market, and we got him? Holy crap. So I love the idea. And I was going to, stay in the secondary until you pick Jesse Bates. My original pick was going to be A.J. Terrell because I feel like this is the year where he's going to get his contract. And Terrell Island's going to be cool. But I'm going to go with Mr. Tuggle's son, Mr. Falcon himself for this generation, Grady Jarrett. Micah, we finally got him help. Taquan
Yes.
Graham, Ebiketie, they're stepping into their next role. They drafted Zach Harrison. They added Bud Dupree. They brought back Lorenzo Carter, Calais Campbell, David Onyemata, Eddie Goldman even is out of retirement. They finally have depth on this defensive line. And if it stays healthy, that's one thing. But he knows that he only has a couple more years left in his prime. The Falcons have wasted a lot of it. And I think he is going to enjoy the hell out of this year. He's going to get to that quarterback. He's going to put a lot of pressure in their face. He might not finish every play, but he is going to make his name known once again, and he is not going to get hoed by Tom Brady this time around, we'd like to think. And I think he is going to enjoy having Hall of Famers lining up next to him and having pass rush help, not being triple teamed like he's Aaron Donald. And I think he is going to make use of one of the last years in his prime, knowing that this is his team. This is Grady Jarrett's team, man. This is Jake Matthews and Grady Jarrett's team. Those are the only two people we have left in the Super Bowl. It is very much their team. And I'm very excited to see the year that Grady Jarrett puts in. So he's my pick for DPOY. All right, Micah, who's your MVP? I feel like we took some good picks off the board already. If we can't reuse the same player.
Let me see. I'd go with.
Yeah,
I'd probably go with Drake.
Okay, that's fair.
I like what him and Ritter have a nice connection, and I'm excited to see him make another step. We seen a receiver. He can be under, like he had Mariota, and he looked good. He got with Ritter and looked even better. Now that they have a full offseason together, and like I said, Bijan's going to help out the receivers. The receivers going to help out the running game. That play action it's going to be deadly.
Mm-hmm. And you know how you said how the comparisons are running wild in the NBA and the NFL these days. That's one thing I do appreciate about baseball is it's less of a comparison-driven sport, more of an enjoy talent as it is sport. And our guy Drake London, of course, was drafted, just around the same area as Chris Olave was of the New Orleans Saints. That's what they're referred to as this podcast. For those of you that know, I'm sure you all agree with us. And they drafted a guy by, as I just named, Chris Olave. And Saints fans love to toot their horn about how Chris Olave had a better season, which statistically, yeah, he did. But could you imagine how bad Chris Olave would have been on this team last year with Marcus Mariota and how much he would have already quit on us by the time Desmond Ridder was out there? Holy crap, he would have been nothing. So the fans that were screaming about they should have taken JSN, they should have taken a wide receiver, Jordan Addison, in the first round. Hell no. It would have been exactly another situation. Drake London was the right pick. I love the idea. And as you said, he showed real chemistry with Ridder last year.
Absolutely.
And he got better. He does have to work on the fumbling. You got to take him out of Roddy White's school of possession. That's one thing. And maybe, okay, Roddy, you're great, but we're not going to have you train this sort of facet. We're maybe going to give that over to, I don't know, Todd McClure, someone who knows how to hold. Just playing. And we'll see how things go from there. Since I said I guess I'll have to be an offensive player, I'm probably not going to give it to Algier. I'm not going to give it to Hollins, Hesse. I'm not going to give it to those guys. I'll take the next best player available, and the real Falcons fans know the value this player is on this team. That's why he has his contract. I'll go Chris Lindstrom for the MVP of the season, especially if we're sticking with the offensive side of the ball. He's the best guard in the NFL, at least as of right now. Maybe he's not the best, but he's climbing up those charts. He gets better and better every year. I will give Thomas Dimitroff credit where it's due. That was definitely one of his last really great picks for this franchise. He earned a second contract. He loves playing here. He loves setting the tone. Him and Jake Matthews have been battling for years together. As soon as Alex Mack left, they were pretty much ditched with a bunch of randos, and they had to find new friends and protect random quarterbacks. And I'm excited to see the year he has, especially with the guys that are going to be in the backfield behind him. So who do you have for your most improved?
I think this one is an easy one for me, and I'm going to go with the guy we traded for in Jeff Okudah.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, he's been injured a lot for a lot of his career, so hasn't been able to, play, obviously. And where he's been healthy, he showed he could be that type of player. And I think just putting him with AJ Terrell and I got it right that time, and Jesse Bates, that gives him a whole bunch of, more
Now playing
opportunities to
small
show.
forward for the Atlanta Hawks, AJ Terrell.
Yeah, it gives him a whole lot more of opportunities to show he's that player, and he could hopefully, if he's the player I'm thinking he's going to be, earn a second contract with this team.
Who would you say would be your offensive most improved player if you had one? I feel like Kaleb McGary would have been a great choice last year, but I don't know if he's going to be able to get much better again.
I'll go with.
Don't take the guy I'm thinking you will. Don't dunk on me.
Hopefully, I'll go with somebody down the line. Yeah.
Drew Dalman, maybe? Drew Dalman, because Bergeron's a rookie.
Him or Hennessy.
Yeah. Hennessy will probably be the week one starter. We hope that Bergeron eventually gets in that mix and Jalen Mayfield is booted off this team for good sooner than later. That was a terrible Dimitrov. I mean, I know it wasn't a Dimitrov pick, but it was a Dimitrov scout pick. It was basically Dimitrov scout saying to Terry, hey, this is all we got. Go with it. And it hasn't worked out because, he was hired recently. But my picks, my defensive most improved player, I feel like as last year, these picks probably would have been Kaleb McGary and Richie Grant. I'm going to go Troy Anderson. I believe the hype is real, especially if they don't add Rashaan Evans back or another linebacker. He's going to have to take that next step. Michael Walker is also going to have to come back to the role he played in 2020 and 2021. He's going to have to be here and earn a second contract more than likely because a lot of the linebackers they have surrounded are more of like these nose edge rushers. So Troy Anderson is going to have to show the Luke Kuechly traits that people say he has quickly if they don't add another linebacker. So I'm going to go with Troy Anderson defensively. And offensively, I guess I'll go with the elephant in the room, and I'll go Desmond Ridder. If everything goes to plan, if he just does his job, and I think Arthur Smith will put him in a very great situation to do that. If we're a playoff team this year, or if we're a winning record team this year, which we haven't been since, January of 2017, it's going to be because of where the leadership starts. That's the quarterback position, and I'm going to give it to Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, I like both of those picks.
So we're nearing the 90-minute mark. We got a couple more minutes. We'll probably run to that point. But yeah, of course, in future episodes, we'll hopefully have more to talk about. We'll maybe have, in this next episode, we'll have a Braves series to recap. We'll have the Hawks Summer League to recap. Maybe the Pascal trade will finally go through. Falcons training camp will be opening. Maybe Micah and I will have a chance to finally give you guys breakdowns on the content we've seen. Maybe, oh my God, Kyle Pitts is out here mossing people and his legs at 75%. Bijan's fumbling. Oh no, what do we do? It's like Jamar Chase dropping in the preseason. The world is over. Stuff along that sort. And of course, the Around the World segment will maybe have a little bit more to talk about. As I said, NBA's in the off season, MLB's in the All-Star break, NFL cycle is not quite there yet. We're in between the free agency OTA zone and training camp. So, but yeah, we definitely enjoyed you guys. And if you made it to this far in episode 1, we really appreciate you, and we hope you come back for a future episode. Once again, I'm Blake Newsome, along with Micah Neal. Of course, if you want to follow us on Twitter, here's my @ right under my name at Newsome Sports ATL, and Micah, you are at
Micah TYN MICAHTYN on Twitter, and on Instagram, Micah TYN _ MICAHTYN _.
And if you want to follow me on Instagram as well, it's a little bit different. It's my initials, BNATL 5. Once again, that's BNATL as in Atlanta 5. We'll be willing to give you guys follow back, talk sports with you guys. We're just two dudes that enjoy this thing, and we love this city of Atlanta, and we're hoping to bring you guys more content in the future. We can't wait for you guys to meet our boys Connor and Dylan in future episodes. When we need to talk Yellow Jackets, and we need to talk, Atlanta United, what's going on with the 5 strikes? Are they going to fire Boca Negra? Are they finally going to fire, whoever's in charge down there now that they keep going through manager since Martino has left? Sooner than later, the back-to-back national championship dogs, Micah's team, not mine, will be ready to go for a 3-peat. So we'll be definitely talking about that. So yeah, hopefully I didn't steal the spotlight from you too much in this episode, Micah. I know I talked a little bit more than you. I think it's more, because I had the bells and whistles on my side of things that I was controlling, but hopefully we get more chemistry as things go along. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, whatever platform you find us on. And we hope to see you guys within the next week and change or so. Micah, is that about what you plan for this podcast? Bi-weekly, about once a week or so?
Mm-hmm.
And any closing statements?
Go Atlanta, go through all the teams, but, just go Atlanta.
All right.
And go Dogs.
You guys see him on the ticker down below. That's one I don't agree with, by the way, the one that you just said. I've never said that before. But
he definitely didn't say it twice before we start recording.
I definitely didn't. You're right. But we appreciate you guys for watching. Peace out. Go A-Town. We out. And we'll see you guys here in the next week or so.